She thought she was running away from her past, slipping into restless sleep on the shoulder of a stranger. But when she opened her eyes, the world had changed. The city around her was not her own, and the stranger beside her was no stranger at all. He was an alpha, bound to her soul. And whether she was ready or not, the bond had already begun. Cora's story begins not with a grand adventure, but with the heavy silence of exhaustion. Every day of her life has been stitched together from long shifts, waiting tables, and stocking shelves, leaving little more than fatigue in her bones. Since the age of 16, when her family slipped from her life like a fading dream, she has drifted through the years as though carrying a weight she cannot put down. Home offers no comfort, only stale air and the endless echo of loneliness. Her heart is a mosaic of scars, pieced together by necessity, but never whole. And every morning she drags herself into survival mode with the numb determination of someone who has forgotten what joy feels like. Boarding the late-night train is less about where she is going and more about leaving behind a place that has only ever broken her. She clutches a worn canvas bag filled with a handful of clothes, cheap notebooks, and the fragile belief that somewhere, anywhere, might hurt less than here. The train hums beneath her, a mechanical lullaby that almost tricks her into thinking she is safe. Neon light flashes across the glass as the town she knows slips away into the dark, replaced by streaks of gold and shadow. Cora slouches into her seat, eyes half closed, her body surrendering to the weight of fatigue. Though her heart aches with the memories she can't shake, she keeps her gaze lowered, unwilling to connect with anyone around her. The train is crowded, yet she feels invisible. One more face among strangers, another soul hoping to outrun the past. The seat beside her shifts, and she becomes aware of a presence that unsettles her. A man. His arrival changes the balance of space, his size making the narrow carriage feel even smaller. His posture is rigid, his silence commanding, and though he doesn't speak, something in his aura presses down on her chest. She doesn't dare look at him directly, but the air between them vibrates with quiet tension, a reminder that she is no longer entirely alone. Still, exhaustion pulls harder than fear. Her eyelids grow heavy, her body betraying her as her head tips against his shoulder. In that accidental surrender, she discovers something strange: comfort. It's not the comfort of family or friendship, but something electric, something alive. A current flickers beneath her skin, threading heat through her veins, as though the universe itself has sparked against her flesh. She stirs with a start, wanting to retreat, but the sensation lingers, impossible to dismiss. It feels as though her heart has found a rhythm not entirely her own, syncing with another pulse that beats steady and strong beside her. The man does not move or push her away. He remains a silent sentinel, his warmth anchoring her. And though she cannot name it, something unseen has already shifted in the shadows of fate.
The journey stretches onward, the train gliding through the dark as though cutting across the edge of the world. For Cora, time warps into a fragile in-between, her body half asleep, yet her senses keenly aware of the stranger beside her. His silence is unnerving, and though she avoids his eyes, she feels them linger with an intensity that borders on predatory curiosity. Every small movement he makes, from the controlled rise and fall of his breath to the subtle tension in his jaw, ripples against her nerves. She knows nothing of him, not his name, not his reason for being here, yet his presence commands her attention in ways she resents. He is too composed, too still, the kind of man who radiates control without uttering a single word. And though she wishes to ignore it, there is a gravity to him that tugs at her, the kind of pull that warns of danger wrapped in allure. Cora tells herself not to care. She buries her hands in her lap, twisting her fingers together, willing herself to be invisible. but the universe refuses her wish. She can feel the heat radiating off him, subtle yet undeniable, a warmth that pushes against her brokenness like a challenge. Her exhaustion becomes a war within her, fight to stay awake or surrender to the comfort that tempts her against every instinct. It has been so long since she felt safe enough to rest, and though she does not trust him, her body aches for reprieve. Slowly, inevitably, her defenses crumble. She drifts, leaning deeper into his shoulder, every beat of her heart tangled with unease. It is then that she feels it, the flicker of something otherworldly. It begins as a whisper beneath her skin, then surges into a spark that lights her veins like fire. She jerks awake, startled, but the glow remains, invisible to the eye yet undeniable to the soul. Her pulse races, her breath shallow. It is as though some unseen thread has tied itself between her and the stranger. She dares a glance, and in that fleeting moment, his silver eyes catch hers. They are luminous, faintly glowing, and impossibly sharp. She looks away at once, but the damage has been done. Whatever has awakened between them will not be silenced. Her life, once defined by monotony and despair, has already veered off course.
Sleep comes for her again, thick and irresistible. She doesn't fight this time. Her head remains on his shoulder, her body surrendering to the train's rhythm and the warmth beside her. But the dreams are different. No longer haunted by the shadows of her past, she drifts into something vivid, flashes of moonlight spilling across water, a forest thick with silver mist, eyes, his eyes, burning bright as stars in the dark. Each vision pulses through her like a heartbeat, too real to dismiss as imagination. Her body responds with heat and shivers, as though something deep within her recognizes what her mind cannot yet accept. When her eyes snap open, the air around them feels charged. She is hyper-aware of every detail, the sound of his breathing, steady and controlled, the weight of the bond pressing against her soul like a chain both heavy and strangely familiar. She pushes herself upright, heart hammering, but the connection remains. It's as though she has been branded, marked by something sacred and irrevocable. Panic wells up in her chest. She doesn't understand what is happening, only that it terrifies her. She has fought all her life to be free, and yet now, without warning, she feels bound. The stranger does not speak. He doesn't need to. His silence is thick with knowledge, a patience that unsettles her more than words ever could. His silver eyes glimmer faintly under the carriage lights, reflecting truths she cannot bear to face. Cora grips her bag tightly, grounding herself in the only reality she knows. She is alone, she is broken, and she cannot afford to trust. But the universe has already shifted. The spark between them is not a dream, not a coincidence. It is destiny intruding into her life without permission. And though she tells herself she will fight it, a whisper deep inside already knows the truth. Some bonds cannot be broken.
The screech of brakes tears her from uneasy sleep. The train lurches, throwing her forward, and the world beyond the glass comes into focus. But it is not the station she expected. This place hums with strange energy, the air thick with salt from a nearby coast and the buzz of neon lights blazing against palm trees. The skyline rises tall and unfamiliar, as though she has woken inside a city that belongs to someone else's dream. It is vast and glittering, filled with life that feels foreign and overwhelming. Chicago should have greeted her with cold stone and steel, but instead she steps into a world more like Los Angeles, sunset warmth painted over urban sprawl, and yet still not quite right. Disoriented, she grips her bag tighter. The station is alive with voices, many of them speaking in accents and rhythms she doesn't recognize. The crowd moves quickly, each person rushing towards something with determined steps, while she stands rooted in place, a stranger in the middle of chaos. Panic ripples through her veins as the realization sets in. She has no idea where she is, no sense of how she arrived here, and no plan for what comes next. All she knows is that this city is not hers, and it looms over her like a giant waiting to swallow her whole. Beside her, the silver-eyed man rises, his presence even more commanding in the chaos of the station. He doesn't seem surprised, doesn't even glance at the unfamiliar skyline as though it is strange. Instead, he looks at her, only her, with an intensity that makes her skin prickle. She wants to move, to vanish into the crowd, but something in his gaze roots her to the ground. His silence is heavy, his posture unyielding. In that moment, Cora understands that wherever she has landed, whatever this city may be, she is not free. She has crossed into a world where nothing will ever be the same.
The crowd bustles around her, but Cora feels isolated in a bubble of fear and uncertainty. She clings to her bag, searching desperately for a sign of normalcy, anything to tether her to reality. But then, out of the corner of her eye, something shifts. At first, she thinks it is only a trick of the light, shadows stretching too far across the station floor. But then the darkness moves, rippling like liquid night, and eyes gleam from within it. Not human eyes. They are too bright, too sharp, glowing faintly with hunger that twists her stomach into knots. Her breath catches in her throat. She stumbles back, nearly colliding with a rushing commuter, but no one else reacts. No one else seems to see the creatures unfurling from the dark corners. They slip closer, their shapes indistinct, their presence suffocating. Every instinct in her screams to run, yet her legs refuse to obey. Fear holds her hostage, her pulse thunderous in her ears as the shadows close in. And then he is there. The silver-eyed man steps forward, his voice cutting like a blade through the din of the station. Mine. The word reverberates in her chest, more command than claim, and the shadows recoil as though burned. Their eyes flicker once, then vanish into the depths, swallowed by the dark from which they came. The station remains alive with movement, oblivious to the terror that nearly consumed her. Only Cora knows which has happened. Only she feels the lingering chill of eyes that had promised to devour her. Her knees weaken and she gasps for air. The stranger doesn't comfort her, doesn't offer explanation. Instead, he turns and guides her forward, his authority undeniable. The crowd parts for him instinctively, as though even those who cannot see the truth still sense the power he wields. She doesn't trust him, doesn't understand him, but in that moment she has no choice but to follow. It is either him or the shadows that hunger in the dark.
The city stretches wide around them, dazzling in its beauty and suffocating in its strangeness. Neon lights shimmer against glass towers, palm trees sway in the ocean breeze, and the streets hum with an energy that feels both glamorous and hollow. Yet Cora cannot focus on any of it. Her mind reels with the memory of glowing eyes and living shadows, with the stranger's voice echoing like a brand across her soul. He leads her away from the station, his pace purposeful, until the chaos of the city gives way to a fortress carved into the skyline itself. It rises tall and imposing, runes etched faintly into its walls, glowing like veins of silver beneath the surface. To others, it may look like luxury. To her, it feels like a cage. Inside, the air is thick with judgment. Wolves, his pack, she realizes, watch her with disdain as they gather in the great hall. Their whispers slash like knives. Human, fragile, unfit. Their eyes are sharp, their posture predatory, and though they smile with mocking amusement, their contempt is undeniable. The fortress is filled with wealth and power, but beneath the gleam of marble and steel lies a simmering hostility. She is not welcome here, not by them, and not even by herself. Cora hugs her arms tight to her chest, trembling yet defiant. She wanted escape. Not this! She wanted freedom, not another prison dressed in gold. Her heart rebels at the thought of fate binding her to this man, this alpha who claims her without consent. She will not be their Luna. She will not bow to prophecy. She will not surrender the last fragments of herself to a bond she refuses to acknowledge. But even as she clings to her resistance, she feels it, the spark, that flared on the train, now pulsing with greater strength. His silver gaze locks with hers, and the bond coils tighter, weaving itself through her soul in threads she cannot unravel. The night closes around her, heavy with promises she cannot escape. The fortress hums with power. The pack whispers like vultures circling their prey, and the Alpha's eyes remain unyielding. She knows she will fight, but she also knows the battle may already be lost. The bond has chosen, and whether she surrenders or resists, destiny has wrapped its claws around her. His voice is the last thing she hears before silence swallows the night. You can fight me, Cora. But the bond has already chosen.
The fortress is alive with tension, its walls humming faintly with power that makes Cora's skin crawl. Though its polished marble floors and gilded halls radiate wealth, she cannot shake the feeling of being caged. The wolves who live here look at her as though she has stumbled into a world she has no right to touch. Their gazes are sharp, filled with judgment. Their whispers echo in corners, cruel and unyielding. One voice rings louder than the rest, a sharp-tongued female wolf who steps forward, her smirk curling with disdain. She mocks Cora's fragility openly, her words dripping with venom. A broken human could never be Luna. Cora's heart clenches, but she refuses to let them see her flinch. Standing nearby is the scarred enforcer, his presence grim but steady. His expression carries no amusement, only the quiet weight of warning. Respect must be commanded, he tells her in a low voice, almost lost beneath the taunts of the others. His words are not comfort, but caution. In this place, survival depends on strength she doesn't yet possess. The fortress may shimmer like a palace, but it is built on dominance and hierarchy, and she is already seen as prey. Every insult cuts deeper than she admits. The wolves sneer at her clothes, her trembling hands, her very humanity. She grips her arms tightly, her body stiff with defiance, even as her voice trembles when she speaks. She swears silently to herself that she will not let their scorn define her. But in the pit of her stomach, a question churns. How can she possibly survive in a world where everything about her is weakness? The fortress is no sanctuary. It is a battlefield waiting for her to stumble. And as the pack disperses, their laughter trailing after them, Cora feels the weight of isolation heavier than ever. The city outside hums with neon and life, but within these walls, she is already marked as unworthy.
The fortress becomes suffocating, its polished halls echoing with whispers she cannot bear to hear. Needing air, Cora slips into the city beyond, wandering streets that glow with neon signs and palm trees swaying in the breeze. For a fleeting moment, she almost convinces herself this is normal. A Hollywood-like boulevard with shops, music, and laughter spilling from open doors. She yearns to lose herself in the noise, to forget the fortress and the wolves who despise her. But peace does not last. In the shimmer of neon, she feels it, the prickle of eyes that do not belong. Shadows peel away from the alley's edge, forming shapes that slither closer. Their glowing eyes cut through the darkness, filled with hunger and malice. She stumbles back, her breath sharp, heart pounding as panic floods her chest. The memory of the station returns in a rush, the creatures that no one else saw, the danger only she seemed able to perceive. Her throat tightens with terror. She is not safe, not here, not anywhere. Before she can flee, a growl splits the night. Gideon appears, his silver eyes blazing with feral light. He moves like a storm, his body a blur of power and violence as he tears through the shadows. The alley becomes a battleground, neon light glinting off his figure as he strikes, each movement precise and brutal. The creatures screech and scatter, retreating into the night. Cora collapses against the wall, trembling as the last shadow vanishes. He turns toward her, his chest heaving, his eyes still glowing with predatory fire. In that moment, she sees what he truly is. Not just a man, not even just an alpha, but something far more dangerous. Her savior and her captor, bound to her by a bond she doesn't understand and doesn't want.
After the attack, Gideon does not give her space to breathe. He takes her back to the fortress, his grip firm but not cruel, his silence heavy with unspoken truths. When he finally speaks, his words unravel the fragile threads of her denial. The mate bond is real, its power undeniable. It is more than attraction, more than destiny, it is life and death. And in this city, it has made her a target. The moon shadows will not stop until she is destroyed, because prophecy has marked her. Cora stares at him, disbelief burning in her chest. A prophecy? About her? He tells her that the moon goddess foretold a human mate, one who could either unite the fractured packs or plunge them into ruin. His gaze lingers on her, searching, daring her to deny what he already knows. She is that human. The thought sickens her. She cannot even hold herself together, cannot even trust her own strength, and yet the universe dares to place such a burden on her shoulders. Her hands shake as she clutches the edge of the table in the fortress hall. The city beyond glows through tall windows, its neon lights painting the room in hues of pink and blue, mocking her fear with their brightness. How can she possibly be what they expect? She is not strong, not a leader, not anything except broken. Yet Gideon speaks with unwavering certainty, as though her fate has already been written. She feels trapped between his conviction and her own disbelief, caught in a prophecy she cannot escape.
The next day, she is led to a training hall etched with glowing runes, their light pulsing faintly against the walls. The pack gathers, watching with cruel interest. The scarred enforcer steps forward, handing her a wooden staff, his face unreadable. She feels their stares prickling her skin, their whispers laced with derision. This is no training meant to strengthen her. This is entertainment, a show of how weak the new Luna truly is. Cora grips the staff, her palms sweaty, her heart thrumming in her chest. The sharp-tongued female wolf smirks and circles her like a predator. "You don't belong here," she sneers, before lunging. The first strike knocks Cora off balance, sending pain jolting through her arm. Laughter erupts from the watching wolves. She stumbles, fights to raise the staff again, but each movement feels heavy, each strike clumsy. The female wolf mocks her with every blow, her taunt slicing deeper than the strikes themselves. Cora feels her cheeks burn, her eyes sting, but she refuses to crumble in front of them. Still, by the time the session ends, her body aches and her pride lies shattered. The pack disperses with smug grins, leaving her trembling in the center of the hall. The enforcer says nothing, only nods once before leaving. For Cora, the silence feels like a verdict. She is too weak to ever belong. The fortress is heavy with disappointment, and though she hides her tears, she feels their weight like chains around her neck. She tells herself she will not break, but the cracks widen with every step she takes back to her quarters.
That night, alone in the fortress, Cora feels the bond's warmth stirring again. It creeps into her chest, soft and insistent, whispering emotions that are not her own. When she closes her eyes, she feels Gideon's presence, steady, unyielding, laced with a quiet vulnerability she doesn't understand. Against her will, her body softens. For a moment, she feels his struggles, the weight he carries as alpha, the fear he buries beneath his strength. The sensation shocks her. How could she, broken as she is, sense him so clearly? She forces herself to pull away, clutching her chest as though she can tear the bond free. But the memory lingers, a fleeting balm against her scars. For the first time in years, she has felt something other than emptiness, connection. And though she tells herself it is only the bond's trick, Part of her wants to hold on to it, if only for a little longer. Outside her window, the city hums with neon glow and ocean breeze, the world still strange and unwelcoming. Yet, in this one fragile moment, she doesn't feel entirely alone.
Cora wakes with resolve burning in her chest. The bond may pull at her, the pack may scorn her, and prophecy may demand her downfall, but she refuses to vanish quietly. She will not be the fragile girl they think she is. She will face them, fight them, prove she is more than a broken shadow clinging to survival. If she cannot escape this city, then she will survive it. When Gideon tells her of a pack gathering, she agrees to attend. Fear coils tight in her stomach, but she masks it with defiance. The fortress gleams as she prepares, its opulence mocking her simplicity. Yet when she stands in front of the mirror, she sees not just the broken girl from the train, but someone on the edge of transformation. The city outside glitters in defiance, a mirror of her own fragile determination. She may not know what waits at this gathering, but one thing is certain: she will not let them see her break again. Her choice is not surrender, but defiance. And in that decision, the first true spark of change ignites. She steps into the night, ready to face the world that has already marked her as unworthy.
The fortress comes alive with restless energy as the pack gathers in the Great Hall. The sound is overwhelming. Laughter, whispers, growls, each one another reminder that Cora does not belong. She stands rigidly on a rune-etched dais beside Gideon, her palms damp, her pulse unsteady. Every gaze cuts into her like a blade, dissecting her with open contempt. Some bare their teeth in cruel smiles, others sneer openly. The sharp-tongued female wolf watches from the front, her smirk poised like a weapon, waiting for Cora to falter. Even the scarred enforcer's silence feels heavy, his folded arms promising judgment rather than mercy. The hall is filled with authority and danger, the walls humming faintly with runelight that illuminates her vulnerability rather than hiding it. Gideon's announcement shatters the air. She is his Luna. The declaration reverberates like thunder, but instead of pride or reverence, it is met with outrage. The hall erupts with mocking laughter, jeers, and questions hurled like stones. Wolves call her weak, unworthy, broken. Cora's chest tightens, every cruel word digging into scars she thought long buried. But it is not only the mockery that unsettles her. She notices the shadows at the edges of the hall, thicker than they should be. Amid the chaos, a flicker of glowing eyes cuts through the crowd, too sharp, too sinister to belong to any wolf. The moon shadows have infiltrated the gathering. Their silent presence feeds on the uproar, their eyes glinting with malice, as if savoring her humiliation. Fear prickles across her skin as the realization takes root. She is not simply despised. She is being watched, hunted. Gideon's hand brushes hers, steadying her in the storm. His grip is firm, commanding silence from some, though not enough to erase the damage. His gaze burns like silver fire, daring the pack to defy him. But Cora can feel the truth. His power may quiet them, but it cannot change their minds. To them, she is a mistake, a liability. The neon glow of the city seeps through the high windows, its harsh colors painting her in light that feels almost mocking. She stands there not as a Luna, but as prey on display. And as the jeers fade into murmurs, Cora knows the gathering has accomplished nothing except to mark her more clearly as a target for enemies both within and outside these walls.
Sleep eludes her that night, every echo of the gathering replaying in her mind. The fortress is quieter, its hallways shadowed, but tension lingers like smoke after a fire. Hoping to escape the weight pressing on her chest, she wanders through dim corridors, her bare feet silent against cold stone. The runes etched into the walls glow faintly, casting eerie patterns on the floor. She tells herself she is only seeking fresh air, but her heart knows the truth. She is searching for answers, for something to make sense of this nightmare. Voices halt her steps, low, clipped, urgent. She presses against the stone wall, holding her breath as she recognizes Gideon's voice, edged with authority and strain. Another voice responds, the scarred enforcer, his tone grim, deliberate. They speak of the prophecy, the same one Gideon hinted at but never explained in full. Cora's blood runs cold as her name falls from their lips. The prophecy foretells a human mate who would tip the balance of power among the packs, either uniting them under one banner or shattering them into ruin, and Gideon believes she is that mate. Her knees weaken at the words, a surge of anger and fear swelling within her. To them, she is not a person. She is a prophecy wrapped in fragile flesh, a pawn on a board she never agreed to play. Her fists curl against her sides, nails biting into her palms as she listens. Gideon's voice, though steady, carries a weight of desperation. He cannot allow her to fail, because her failure would mean their destruction. The enforcer's response is laced with doubt, his silence following like a shadow too heavy to shake. Cora slips away, her heart hammering as though it will tear itself from her chest. Every step echoes with the truth she cannot outrun. Whatever destiny the moon goddess has woven, she is trapped within it. And worse, the man tethered to her soul may see her not as Cora, but as a prophecy to fulfill. The thought slices deeper than any blade.
When dawn breaks, her anger boils over. She finds Gideon in the fortress hall, standing tall in the light of a stained glass window that casts his silver eyes in shards of color. The sight only fuels her fury. "Tell me everything," she demands, her voice sharp, trembling not with weakness, but with rage. "No more half-truths, no more silence. What am I to you? A prophecy? A weapon? Or just a chain you're forcing around my neck?" The words spill out in a torrent, her pain laced with defiance. For once, she does not cower beneath his gaze. Gideon regards her quietly, his posture calm but unyielding. He admits the prophecy is real, that the moon shadows will never stop until she is destroyed, and that he believes the bond between them is their only hope of survival. His silver eyes burn with conviction as he tells her she is more than she believes, that the bond can heal her brokenness, that she is meant to stand at his side as Luna. But his certainty only suffocates her further. To him, her scars are obstacles. To her, they are part of who she is. His words feel like chains disguised as promises. Tears sting her eyes, but her voice is fire. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've lived through, and you don't get to decide that this bond is salvation. To me, it's a prison." The silence that follows is heavier than any argument. Gideon does not flinch, his calm unbroken. But beneath it, she feels the pulse of the bond thrumming like a heartbeat they share. The tension is unbearable. Her rage, his composure, the bond weaving them tighter even as they try to pull apart. She turns away, breath ragged, her heart a storm of defiance and fear. And though she tells herself she will fight him until the bond shatters, the truth whispers cruelly in her chest. She cannot escape the tether tying her fate to his.
The city outside calls to her. Cora wanders its streets, each step heavy with the weight of betrayal and fear. She longs for anonymity in the crowd, for the hum of traffic and laughter to drown the storm within her. But the shadows do not grant her peace. They slither out from alleyways, their glowing eyes cutting through the haze, their presence unmistakable. This time, she is not frozen by terror. She seizes a broken pipe from the ground, her hands shaking as she raises it like a weapon. The moon shadows close in, snarls echoing between the buildings. She swings, desperation fueling every strike. One shadow screeches, dispersing into smoke beneath the blow. And for a heartbeat, pride sparks in her chest. But there are too many. Their claws slice the air, their teeth snap too close. She falters, fear gripping her throat as they press in. Just as despair threatens to overwhelm her, Gideon's roar shatters the night. He descends upon the shadows like a storm, his body a blur of power and fury. The fight is brutal, neon light flashing off his silver eyes as he tears through the attackers. Side by side, they battle until the last shadow fades, the alley left in eerie silence. Cora collapses against the wall, gasping for breath. Gideon crouches beside her, his chest heaving, his eyes still blazing with the remnants of battle. And for the first time, she sees fear in him, not fear for himself, but for her. The realization cuts deep. Maybe he does not see her only as a prophecy. Maybe, despite everything, he fears losing her.
By dawn, the story of the battle has spread. The pack gathers in murmurs, their tones no longer filled only with mockery. Whispers shift, subtle but undeniable. Some speak of her courage, others of her recklessness, but all agree on one truth. She fought, and she survived. The scarred enforcer watches her differently now, his nod of acknowledgement small but significant. Even the sharp-tongued female wolf narrows her eyes with something closer to wary respect than pure disdain. Cora does not bask in their approval. She knows it is fragile, conditional, but for the first time, she feels a crack in the wall of contempt that has surrounded her since she arrived. The fortress feels less like a cage, though it is still no sanctuary. She walks its halls with her chin lifted a little higher, her steps steadier. The weight of brokenness still clings to her, but beneath it, something fierce is taking root. She may still be prey in their eyes, but she is no longer an easy target. The neon city beyond the fortress walls reflects this shift, its lights harsh yet alive, promising both danger and opportunity. Perhaps she can be more than the fragile human they mocked. Perhaps she can carve out strength of her own.
The bond hums ceaselessly, weaving tighter with every passing day. Cora resists, but its pull is constant, whispering Gideon's emotions into her chest with unnerving clarity. Late one night, standing by the fortress window, she allows herself a moment of surrender. She closes her eyes and lets the connection flow. She feels his presence as though he stands beside her, steady, commanding, yet weighed down by burdens he never shows. His loneliness filters through the bond, mingling with her own, and for a fleeting heartbeat, they are not alpha and unwilling mate, but two broken souls bound by the same ache. The experience rattles her. She clutches the windowsill, trembling, torn between fear and longing. The city glows beyond the glass, neon lights and ocean breeze weaving a dreamlike haze that mirrors her confusion. The bond is dangerous, she knows, a tether that could unravel everything she has fought to protect. Yet it soothes her scars in ways nothing else ever has. She tells herself it is a trick, a manipulation of fate. But deep inside, she knows the truth. Resistance is crumbling. Each spark of connection is another step closer to surrender, and the thought terrifies her more than the shadows ever could. As the night deepens, she whispers a silent vow to herself. She will not be consumed by this bond. She will not lose herself, no matter how strong the pull becomes. But even as the vow forms on her lips, her heart betrays her, because part of her already wonders if surrender might not be the end, but the beginning of something she cannot yet name.
The training hall glowed faintly with runes etched into the floor, each mark pulsing like veins of silver fire beneath the surface. Cora stood in the center, her chest tight, surrounded by hostile stares. The sharp-tongued female wolf stalks circles around her, smirking with cruel delight, waiting for the fragile human to humiliate herself again. The last attempt had ended in failure, her strikes too weak, her footing clumsy. The pack had laughed, their voices echoing in her skull for days afterward. But this time was different. Cora clenched her fists until her nails bit into her palms. The memory of the moon shadow's claws cutting through the neon night still haunted her. She had survived that, and if she could fight shadows, she could fight this wolf. The female wolf lunged with inhuman speed, her claws swiping toward Cora's throat. Instinct screamed at Cora to run, but anger rooted her instead. At the last second, she ducked, feeling the air shift where death had almost touched her. The wolf snarled, pivoting to strike again, but Cora's hand shot out, gripping a discarded training staff. With all her weight behind it, she swung. The crack echoed through the hall as the wood connected with her opponent's ribs. Silence followed, the shock as sharp as the impact. The female wolf staggered back, her snarl twisting into something uglier, fury. But the damage had already been done. The pack's laughter stilled, replaced by a ripple of surprise. Cora's chest heaved, her hands trembling, but she didn't let the staff drop. She met their gazes with her chin raised, her fears smoldering into defiance. Gideon's voice broke the silence. Again. The order carried no ridicule, only the weight of approval, and it sent another ripple through the gathered wolves. For the first time, Cora felt something break open inside her, a crack where strength seeped through, fragile but undeniable. She had not won, not truly, but she had drawn blood. And that, in this fortress of predators, was enough to shift the tide.
Later, when the training hall had emptied and the whispers faded, Gideon found her alone. She sat against the wall, her staff resting across her knees, exhaustion tugging at her eyelids. The bruises on her arms throbbed, each one a reminder of her body's fragility, yet beneath the ache burned something fierce. Gideon crouched beside her, his silver eyes soft in the torchlight. "You surprised them," he said, voice low, more intimate than commanding. "You surprised me." Cora scoffed, too tired to lift her guard. "I didn't win. I just got lucky." But the bond betrayed her, carrying not only her words but her vulnerability into him. She felt his quiet amusement brush against her chest, felt the steadiness of his pride as though it were her own heartbeat. She hated how easily the bond soothed her, hated how her scars seemed to quiet when his presence pressed against her walls. It felt like surrender, and surrender terrified her. Yet, as he settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed, she didn't move away. "You are not weak," he murmured, almost as if speaking to himself. "You've carried more weight than half this pack ever has, and you're still standing." His confession unraveled something inside her. For weeks, she had only seen his authority, his dominance, his unyielding control. Now she glimpsed the cracks, the loneliness that lingered in his voice, the fear he never admitted aloud. Her heart tightened. She wanted to deny it, to push him away, but she couldn't. The bond pulsed between them, a dangerous temptation. For a fleeting moment, she leaned into his warmth, letting the silence settle around them like a fragile truce. And it was in that silence that she realized the bond wasn't only chains, it was also a mirror, reflecting the brokenness they both carried.
The fragile calm did not last. Whispers spread like wildfire through the fortress, carried on sharp tongues and suspicious glances. The moon shadows had infiltrated again, not with claws this time, but with words. Rumors seeped through the pack that Cora was cursed, that her presence was weakening the alpha, that the prophecy was a lie. At first, she ignored them, but soon the whispers grew bolder. Wolves muttered loud enough for her to hear, their eyes filled with contempt. Some even questioned aloud whether the pack would fall because of her. The pressure was suffocating. Every corridor felt colder, every gaze sharper. Even when Gideon stood beside her, his dominance silencing their open mockery, she felt the weight of their doubt pressing down like a stone on her chest. One evening, as the pack gathered in the great hall, a voice rang out from the crowd. She will be the end of us." The words echoed, igniting a chorus of agreement. Fear rippled through the wolves like a contagion, and Cora felt the bond tighten painfully in her chest. Gideon roared for silence, his voice cracking like thunder, but she knew the damage had been done. When the hall emptied, she stood alone in the shadows, her body trembling. The moon shadows hadn't needed to kill her. They only had to convince the pack she was poison, and it was working. As her reflection shimmered faintly in the rune-etched walls, she whispered to herself the fear she dared not voice. What if they're right? What if I really am the weakness that destroys him? The silence gave no answer, only the faint echo of her own heartbeat, too loud in the emptiness.
The pack council was held days later, the tension inside the hall thick enough to choke on. Leaders from across the city gathered, their eyes gleaming with suspicion and challenge. Cora stood at Gideon's side, her chest tight, every instinct screaming to flee. But when the sharp-tongued wolf sneered at her from across the dais, voice dripping venom, "A broken human cannot be our Luna," something inside her snapped. The words echoed too closely to her own doubts, too perfectly to the scars she carried. But instead of breaking, they lit a fire. She stepped forward, her voice trembling at first, but rising with each word. "I may not have been born one of you. I may not have claws or strength or power like yours, but I have bled in your streets. I've faced the shadows that hunt us, and I'm still here. Can any of you say the same?" The silence that followed was sharp as a blade. Wolves shifted uncomfortably, their eyes narrowing, but no one spoke. Even the female wolf's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of surprise. For the first time, Cora wasn't speaking for Gideon or for the prophecy. She was speaking for herself. Her chest heaved, her heart raw, but her words lingered in the hall long after the silence swallowed them. Gideon's gaze burned into her, not with dominance, but with pride. She had not erased the pack's doubt, not by far, but she had forced them to listen. And that, in a fortress built on dominance, was more dangerous than claws.
The victory at the council was fleeting. That night, alone in her chamber, the silence pressed down heavy. Every scar on her body seemed to ache. Every memory clawed its way to the surface. She curled on the edge of her bed, hugging her knees, her chest tight with the old fear that she could never truly belong anywhere. Her words at the council had been fire, but now she felt the embers cooling, leaving only ash. She wondered if she was fooling herself, if she was playing Luna while knowing deep down she would always be broken. The city outside gleamed with neon light, casting shifting colors across her floor. They reminded her of the chaos in her own mind, flashes of past trauma, the feeling of being abandoned, the terror of being changed to someone she did not choose. The bond hummed in her chest, steady and insistent, offering comfort she did not want to accept. She pressed her palms to her ears as if she could block it out, as if she could block him out. But Gideon was always there, his emotions threading into her chest like whispers in the dark. Tears burned her eyes as she whispered to the night, "I don't know who I am anymore." The silence offered no answers. Only the bond's steady hum reminded her she was not truly alone. And somehow that truth frightened her more than loneliness ever had.
It was Gideon who found her, hours later, sitting on the balcony with the night breeze in her hair. She didn't look at him when he stepped into the doorway. She expected commands, rebukes, the usual weight of his authority. Instead, his voice came quiet, almost tentative. "I know what it feels like to carry more than you can bear." The confession startled her. She turned, and for once, his silver eyes weren't fire. They were human, raw, vulnerable. He spoke of his own scars, of the weight of leading a pack that doubted him long before they doubted her, of the endless nights fearing he would fail those who trusted him. Each word stripped away the layers of dominance she had come to expect, revealing the man beneath the alpha.
And as he spoke, the bond pulsed with an intimacy that made her chest ache. She wasn't the only one broken. She wasn't the only one afraid. When he fell silent, she whispered the words she had been too afraid to speak. "I don't know if I can do this." Gideon didn't argue, didn't command. He only reached for her hand, his touch steady and grounding. "Then let me carry some of it with you." The bond flared, warmth spilling into her chest, softening her scars in a way she couldn't deny. She wanted to pull back, but she didn't. For the first time, she let the warmth remain. And in the quiet of that moment, with the city glowing beneath them and the bond humming between their hearts, she realized the truth. Perhaps she was not as alone or as broken as she believed.
The city was uneasy. For days, the air had carried a strange heaviness, as though the skyline itself held its breath. But on the night of the blood moon, dread settled like frost across the fortress. Cora stood at the highest balcony, staring at the horizon, where the moon rose fat and red, bleeding across the ocean's surface. The sight clawed at her gut, primal and ominous. Even the wolves, hardened and proud, muttered among themselves, their voices low with unease. This was no ordinary moon. It was an omen, a warning etched across the sky by the goddess herself. The runes etched into the fortress walls glowed faintly, their silver light warring against the moon's red hue. Gideon's presence was a steady anchor at his side, but even he could not mask the tension in his jaw, the tightness in his shoulders. "They're coming," he said simply. His silver eyes reflected the blood moon's glow. His voice carried no fear, but the bond hummed with it, betraying what he would never admit aloud. Cora's hands curled against the stone railing, her heart thundering. This was what the prophecy had always pointed toward: chaos, destruction, war. She wanted to deny it, to cling to the fragile piece she had carved out of her brokenness. But the city below was alive with movement, shadows stirring in every corner, whispers of moon shadows slithering closer. The night was no longer safe. As the blood moon climbed higher, she felt the bond tighten like a noose. Something inside her knew the truth. Tonight, the fate of them all would be decided, and she could no longer run from it.
The first strike came without warning. A shudder rippled through the fortress walls, followed by the deafening crash of shattered stone. The pack scattered into battle stances, their snarls echoing through the great hall. Cora barely had time to catch her breath before the air filled with the stench of rot and the hiss of shadows come alive. The moon shadows poured through the breach like liquid night, their glowing eyes burning with hunger. The fortress erupted into chaos. Wolves lunged, claws slashing, teeth snapping, but the shadows fought like nightmares given form. Cora clutched a shard of broken runestone, her chest tight as she searched for an opening, for survival. The pack fought fiercely, but the enemy was relentless, spilling across the marble floor, scaling the walls, ripping through runes meant to protect them. For the first time, she saw fear on the faces of the wolves who had mocked her, and the sight chilled her more than any blade. Through the chaos, Gideon was a storm. His silver eyes burned as he tore through shadow after shadow, his body moving with lethal precision. Yet even his power could not stem the tide. More poured in, their snarls echoing through the fortress, their claws slicing through stone and steel alike. Cora pressed her back against the wall, heart pounding as the shadows closed in from every side. The fortress, once so imposing, now felt like a tomb.
The battle raged into the heart of the fortress, shadows flooding every corridor. Cora swung her shard desperately, the edge tearing through one shadow's form, but three more surged forward. Panic surged as claws sliced across her arm, hot blood spilling down her sleeve. Pain ripped through her chest, and then another pain followed, sharp and deeper, echoing through the bond. She turned and saw Gideon falter, blood blooming across his side where a shadow's strike had landed true. Her breath caught. The alpha who had seemed invincible, who had always stood unshaken, now staggered beneath the weight of wounds meant for her. She felt it through the bond, the tearing of flesh, the crushing weight of exhaustion, the sharp flare of his determination to keep standing. Rage burned in her chest, but beneath it pulsed something more dangerous. Fear. Fear of losing him. Fear of watching the bond sever in blood and silence. Gideon met her gaze across the chaos, his eyes blazing even as his body faltered. "Stay alive," he growled, his voice ragged but commanding. And then he turned back into the fray, his claws glowing faintly with silver light, cutting down shadows with every strike. But Cora could feel it. He was burning himself out, every wound weakening him further. And as the shadows pressed closer, she realized the unthinkable. If nothing changed, Gideon would not survive the night.
Something inside her snapped. The fear that had always shackled her, the brokenness that had defined her life, shattered beneath the weight of her desperation. She refused to let the bond end in blood. She refused to lose him. With a cry torn from the depths of her soul, she surged forward, glass shard in hand, her body trembling but unyielding. The shadows turned toward her, their glowing eyes promising death. But for the first time, she didn't flinch. The first shadow lunged, and she met it head-on, driving the shard into its chest. It screeched and dissolved into smoke, the sound rattling her bones. Another came, claws raised, and she swung again, wild but relentless. Each strike was fueled, not by skill, but by sheer will, a refusal to die. Her arms ached, her wounds burned, but she kept moving, kept fighting. Somewhere in the chaos she heard wolves calling her name, their voices no longer mocking but desperate, urging her on. When she stumbled, it was the scarred enforcer who pulled her back to her feet, his eyes gleaming with new respect. "Stand, Luna!" he growled, shoving her forward. And she did. With blood dripping down her arm and fury blazing in her chest, she stood against the shadows, no longer prey, but defiance made flesh. The fortress trembled around them, but she refused to fall. Tonight, she would fight, not just for herself, not just for Gideon, but for them all.
The bond burned brighter with every heartbeat, surging through her veins until she could hardly breathe. Gideon stumbled, bloodied and faltering. An instant drove her to him. She crashed through the chaos, cutting down shadows with the strength she didn't know she had, until she reached him. His silver eyes met hers, dimmed but unbroken, and without hesitation she pressed her palm to his chest. The world erupted in light. Silver poured from her skin, flooding through the bond, weaving into Gideon's wounds and exploding outward in a wave of power. The moon shadows shrieked as the light engulfed them, their forms unraveling into nothingness. The fortress shook as the silver blaze filled every corner, burning the darkness away. Wolves shielded their eyes, their howls echoing in awe as the bond revealed its true power. Not chains, not weakness, but salvation. Cora gasped as the light drained from her, leaving her trembling but alive. Gideon stood taller, his wounds closed, his strength restored by the bond they shared. He stared at her with something raw, something unspoken, as if he too had only now understood the full depth of what tied them together. Around them, silence fell. The moon shadows were gone, scattered into dust. And in that silence, the pack turned their eyes to her, not with scorn, not with doubt, but with reverence.
The fortress lay in ruins. Walls had crumbled, runes had dimmed, and the floor was stained with blood. Yet amid the destruction, the pack gathered in stunned silence. Then, slowly, voices rose. One by one, wolves dropped to their knees, bowing not only to Gideon, but to her. The word rippled through the hall, carried on growls and whispers, until it became a roar. "Luna!" Cora's chest ached as the sound washed over her. The same wolves who had mocked her, who had doubted her, now lowered their heads in respect. Even the scarred enforcer bowed, his sharp eyes gleaming with pride, and the female wolf, once her fiercest critic, met her gaze with reluctant acknowledgement before kneeling as well. For the first time, Cora felt something she had never known in this city: belonging. But as the blood moon sank toward the horizon, she knew the war was far from over. The shadows had been broken tonight, but they were not gone. The prophecy still lingered, its weight pressing against her chest like an unfinished song. And though the pack now hailed her as Luna, she knew this was only the beginning. The bond had saved them tonight, but its power was a double-edged blade, one that could just as easily destroy them all. As Gideon's hand closed around hers, steady and sure, Cora whispered to herself the truth that chilled her heart. This victory was only a pause before the storm to come.
The fortress was scarred by battle, yet it breathed with new life. Wolves filled the great hall, their voices low but reverent as they surrounded Cora and Gideon. The same pack that had mocked her fragility now bowed, one by one, their heads lowered in acknowledgement. Cora stood in the center of it all, her chest heaving, her skin still tingling with the remnants of the bond's unleashed power. She had expected rejection, had prepared for scorn. Yet what spread through the hall was something altogether different: acceptance. The scarred enforcer knelt first, his loyalty clear in the depth of his gaze. The sharp-tongued female wolf followed reluctantly, her smirk gone, her eyes sharp with newfound respect. And then the others fell into line, until the hall echoed with the chant that made Cora's heart pound. Luna. The word rolled through her like fire and water all at once. It was not a title she had sought, not a crown she had asked for, yet it now pressed against her shoulders with undeniable weight. She lifted her chin, her trembling steadied by the bond's quiet hum. Gideon's silver eyes never left her, his pride a steady warmth in her chest. For the first time, she believed she might belong, not because she had been chosen, but because she had fought for it. Still, a whisper lingered at the back of her mind, a reminder that belonging was fragile. Respect could be won in blood and light, but trust had to be earned over time. The wolves bowed, but their faith would be tested again. Cora knew the shadows had not spoken their last word.
Later that night, as silence settled over the fortress and the blood moon dipped behind the horizon, Cora found Gideon in the remnants of the war room. Maps lay scattered across the table, their corners burned, edges smeared with blood and ash. He stood at the head of the table, hands braced against the wood, his head bowed. For a moment, he did not notice her, and she saw the cracks in his armor. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion, his breath uneven. He had been alpha for so long, she realized, carrying the weight of leadership without pause. Tonight, even victory seemed heavy on him. When he lifted his head, the mask of control slid back into place, but the bond betrayed the truth. She felt his fear, his weariness, his desperate hope that he would not fail them now that the prophecy had taken root. "You shouldn't see me like this," he muttered, his voice low, but there was no command in it, only resignation. Cora stepped closer, her heart tightening. "You're not invincible, Gideon," she whispered. "You never had to be." He looked at her then, truly looked, and for the first time she saw not the alpha, but the man. His silver eyes softened, shadows of loneliness flickering within them. "I almost lost you," he confessed, his words raw. "When you stood in that battle, when the shadows closed in, I felt it, and I couldn't." His voice broke, and he turned away as though ashamed. Without thinking, Cora reached for him, her hand finding his. The bond flared between them, warmth spilling into her chest, steadying her heartbeat. "You didn't lose me," she said firmly, her voice a vow, "and you won't." In that moment, she wasn't speaking as Luna, nor as the fulfillment of a prophecy. She was speaking as herself, broken but unyielding,
tethered to him not by fate but by choice. And though she feared what lay ahead, she knew this truth. Gideon Frost was not unshakable. He was human beneath the alpha, and it was that vulnerability, not his power, that bound her to him more fiercely than any prophecy could.
The days that followed were filled with the clang of hammers and the murmur of voices. The fortress, once a symbol of untouchable power, now bore the scars of war: collapsed walls, scorched ceilings, shattered ruins. Yet, amidst the ruin, the pack worked together, their strength and unity fueling the rebuilding. Cora walked the halls, her steps steady despite the whispers that still followed her. This time, they were not whispers of mockery, but of curiosity, of growing respect. Wolves who had once sneered now nodded as she passed, their acknowledgement subtle but significant. Even the sharp-tongued female wolf offered a begrudging smile one morning, though it was as sharp as ever. Cora threw herself into the work, her hands raw from lifting debris, her body aching with labor. She refused to stand idle while others rebuilt. Gideon protested at first, insisting she rest, but she silenced him with a look that brooked no argument. If I'm their Luna, then I rebuild with them. And so she did. Day after day, she moved stone and timber, her body growing stronger, her scars no longer only emotional, but physical proof of her will to endure. The fortress rose again, not as it had been, but as something new, woven with resilience, bound by shared survival. One evening, as the sun set behind the skyline, casting golden light across the repaired walls, Gideon found her standing with dirt on her hands and sweat streaking her brow. He studied her in silence, his gaze lingering with something unspoken. "You look like you've always belonged here," he murmured, and for once she didn't argue. She looked at the fortress, at the wolves laughing and working beside her, and she felt it too. Belonging was not given, it was built, brick by brick, scar by scar. And for the first time in her life, she had laid the foundation herself.
But even as the fortress walls rose, shadows lingered at the edges of the city. Whispers spread of moon shadows regrouping, of their hunger not yet quenched. Scouts returned with stories of strange gatherings in the coastal ruins, of red-eyed figures watching from afar. The council grew restless, their faith in Gideon and Cora shaken by the prophecy's unresolved nature. "The blood moon may have passed," one elder growled during a heated meeting, "but prophecy is not so easily silenced. The human girl may yet be our undoing." Cora sat beside Gideon, her hands clenched beneath the table, her heart pounding with each accusation. Though the pack had bowed to her, suspicion still coiled like a serpent in their midst. Gideon silenced the council with a single growl, but she knew his dominance could not erase their doubts. Later that night, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the neon-lit city, Cora whispered the truth aloud. "They're right, in a way. The prophecy isn't finished. We won one battle, but the war hasn't ended." Gideon's silver eyes met hers, burning with determination. "Then we'll face it together," he vowed. But even as he spoke, she felt it, the bond thrumming with tension, as though fate itself was holding its breath. The war was coming, and the shadows were not done with them.
For so long, Cora had defined herself by her brokenness. She had carried her scars like chains, her trauma like proof of weakness. But as she stood in the fortress courtyard, watching the pack train beneath the rising sun, she realized something had shifted. Her scars were not a weakness, they were a record of survival. Each one told a story of nights endured, of battles fought, of resilience earned. The pack still doubted her, but she no longer doubted herself. And that change, more than the bond, more than the prophecy, was what gave her strength. She stepped into the training circle, surprising the wolves who paused mid-spar to watch. "Again," she ordered, lifting a practice staff. The scarred enforcer raised a brow but obliged, circling her with measured steps. This time, when the blows came, she didn't falter. Her arms shook, her legs burned, but she moved with determination. She struck back, her staff cracking against his with sharp precision. The pack watched, murmurs rising, their eyes following her not with scorn, but with grudging respect. By the time she lowered her staff, breathless and bruised, the courtyard echoed with silence. And then, slowly, the scarred enforcer bowed his head. "Luna," he said simply, and the word rippled through the pack once more, steadier than before. Cora's chest swelled with pride, but it wasn't the pride of acceptance. It was the pride of self-knowledge. She was not strong because they said so. She was strong because she had chosen to be. Every single day she refused to give in to despair. The strange city no longer felt entirely alien. Its neon lights, its coastal breeze, its Hollywood glow, they were hers now, woven into the story she was writing with her own blood and will.
The night was quiet when Cora and Gideon stood together on the highest balcony, the city sprawling below them like a living dream. Palm trees swayed in the coastal wind, neon lights painted the skyline in shifting colors, and the ocean shimmered beneath the moon. For the first time, the silence between them was not heavy, but peaceful. Gideon's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining, the bond humming steady and warm. "We've come far," he said softly, his voice carrying both pride and weariness. "But this is only the beginning." Cora nodded, her heart steady. She no longer feared the bond, no longer felt it as chains. It was part of her, as much as her scars, as much as her strength. The prophecy still loomed, the moon shadows still stirred, but she no longer faced them as the broken girl who had boarded a train with nothing but a bag of clothes and old wounds. She faced them as Luna, as a fighter, as someone who had found belonging in the most unlikely of places. She turned to Gideon, her voice steady. "Then let's begin." Below, the fortress gleamed with new light, its scars still visible, but its strength undeniable. The pack was united, the bond unbroken, the prophecy unfinished. The strange city stretched out around them, vibrant and dangerous, a stage for battles yet to come. Cora tightened her grip on Gideon's hand, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The story was far from over, but she no longer feared it. Whatever came, she would face it not as a broken girl, but as Luna of the strange city.
If this story pulled you into Cora's world, don't let it end here. Hit that like button if you felt the bond, share this with someone who loves a good alpha romance, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss intriguing stories as they drop. Tell me in the comments, if the moon goddess tied your soul to a stranger, would you fight the bond or surrender to fate? See you on the next one.